To the third episode in the OTT Red Spotlight podcast here live at IBC 2024. We're sponsored by Bedrock Streaming, and not only sponsored, but we're also lucky enough in this episode to be talking about collaboration and joint ventures with the CEO of Bedrock Streaming and Jonathan Thompson. Guys, welcome to the table. Welcome to the IBC 2024. We're here again. How's the day been for you so far at the end of day one?
You go first.
Good, busy, lots of people, lots of energy. Nice. It's very nice. I like the buzz of IBC. It's just nice to see friends and family. So yeah, we're happy.
Brilliant.
And yeah.
Jonathan?
Same, crazy, busy, too many steps. But it's my first time here in 3 years. I've forgotten what the experience of IBC was like. But it's been good.
Everybody's Apple Watch gets overloaded with step
I think I'm
counting.
up to about 40,000 already.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us a little bit, for those that might be watching this, who are not as familiar with your brands as we are at this table. Give us 30 seconds, guys, on the organisations that you are the chief executive of and where they're positioned in their relative markets. Jonathan?
Shall I go first? Yeah, so I'm chief executive of Everyone TV. We are a joint venture of the 4 UK public service broadcasters, BBC, ITV, Channel 4 and Channel 5, owned equally by all 4 of them. And we're there basically to sustain and promote and support the health of free TV in the UK. That's our mission, and we do that through now 3 platforms. So we run Freeview Play and FreeSat, which are 2 kind of well-regarded and well-known free-to-air TV platforms in the UK, and we've just launched, and we may talk more about it, Freely, which is our streaming free service that we've just launched with our partners in the smart TV market in the UK earlier this year. So that's us in a nutshell.
Who hasn't heard of Freely in the last few months? Absolutely.
It's my single-handed job to try and promote it to everyone I see.
I like the brand. It's a cool brand.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
good.
Well, we'll definitely assist your single-handed
Excellent.
job with this podcast.
Good to hear.
Jonas, tell us about Bedrock Streaming.
Yeah, so Bedrock, also a joint venture between M6 and Altair Group. Basically, we build and power streaming platforms. I used to say video streaming platforms. That's still the essence of it. But nowadays we have podcasts, we have audiobooks, we have more and more different types of content. And we do this for across a couple of countries. We have 400 people, streaming experts working for us. We have 45 million, 50 million users roughly on the platform. So that's what Bedrock is in a very short 30 seconds.
So we've got 2 extremely well qualified chief executives to talk to us about the topic of joint ventures, partnerships, collaborations, and it's one that is extremely relevant to the moment that we're in, I think, in the media sector.
Yeah.
And I want to start off by asking you what you think that circumstance is a product of. Is it a contemporary circumstance born of, the more challenging economic situation that media has been in recently? Or I think that Freely is a great example, where PSBs need to make sure that the public still have a provision of service and access to content. That's a more protracted reality that even from a governmental perspective, they should be aware of. What's your posture on it, guys? I mean, slightly different businesses, but both businesses being inherently JVs.
Yeah.
Jonas, what's your...
From my perspective, I think Bedrock went into this with a very simple view that the whole streaming industry from a user perspective is set by global giants. As an end user, you will have doesn't matter where you live, you will have a Spotify, you will have a Netflix and more different services, right? So if you're then in Germany or France or UK, you're used to be able to play and compete only against the local players. Nowadays, the end users, their expectations are being set by big guys, deep pockets, and you simply have to live up to those standards. It can't be. It's not. Doesn't get any better than that, basically. And to do that, you need scale. You need money and scale. And I think, and the belief from Bedrock hasn't changed. Reaching that scale is virtually impossible in Europe in any given country, even in the big countries.
Yeah.
And I think what has changed, so it's a little bit to your point, when we said that in 2019, people were like, we kind of see the logic, but we think we're big enough, we think this country is big enough, we can do it by ourselves. And I think what has happened now, what has accelerated this, is the whole economical downturn, all the challenges that the industry are facing. I think now people are saying, actually, money isn't for free anymore. I can't just go to my board and say I need 20 more million for streaming. They actually ask questions, and now they expect me to be profitable and all the things that we know. So I think a lot of people are more and more agreeing to Bedrock's view of things, and that partnership is really important and needed. So yeah, I think that's so it's a structural thing, but it's being accelerated by the circumstances we're living in right now.
Yeah. Guys, I want to make sure we don't miss any of the gems of wisdom, so I want to encourage you to just keep
sorry.
Jonathan, what's your posture on it? Because same space, same sector, slightly different type of organisation.
Yeah. Well, the simple one-line answer we use internally is better together. That's a simple one-line answer. But to expand on that, I agree with what Jonas was saying. I think national broadcasters in my space have been used for decades to being kind of dominant in a national market, and that's over. TV is a global marketplace. The streaming future is a global TV marketplace. And I think in that space, there's lots of different reasons why collaboration is more important. I think one of them is simply that to have the kind of scale you need to compete in that world, you have to work together, and that's kind of the journey we've been on. So it's scale and the ability to kind of just have more power in a marketplace shaped by global players. I think a second reason is, and we've learned this with Freeview and with Freely, there are certain things you can only do together. To create, for example, with Freely, to create a coherent live TV experience for viewers over a streaming platform, you have to do together. It doesn't make sense for each of you to do it individually. You have to do it together. And I guess a sort of third reason, and I always have to be slightly careful in saying this because I'm not in any way kind of down on my shareholders' investment in their own platforms. That's a critical part of it. But when there's pressure on kind of cost, don't duplicate the same thing 4 times.
Yeah.
There are things you can do once, and that is at the heart of the Bedrock model, which I really love. Is that there are aspects of moving into the streaming future that will be proprietary and bespoke and unique, and the heart of that is the content. But there's aspects of the tech it's not worth doing 3-4 times, and that again is a driver for collaboration. So I think there's lots of different reasons. Some are positive, some are a little bit defensive, but it's a direction of travel. I think is only going one way.
So lots of different dimensions of gravity when it comes to what might motivate a joint venture, collaboration, whatever else that might be. What are your thoughts on the necessity for technological advancements that can arise from collaborations? Because we're clearly in a technology market. That's the whole, that's exactly what streaming is. It's an IT form of content delivery. Is that one of the advantages? Is that one of the tangible advantages that are created through collaborations where, individually and alone an organisation might have a deficit when it comes to what they're able to achieve, to your point, Jonathan, but actually together you get 2 strengths together and you can start to really accelerate things. Is that one of your
absolutely
beliefs?
To Jonathan's point, right, I think that just doing the same thing over and over again makes no sense, right? However, what we try to encourage, right, we create a really strong platform, but there's lots of room. We call it Bedrock for Developers, because we acknowledge that there's lots of the clients that we work with that have really talented tech people, etc. And what we can enable is don't reproduce, but build on top. There will be stuff that is for whatever reason, it's either commercially really valuable, you can monetize better, or it's glossy and you can speak about it. There's just commercial value in it. Do that. Don't reproduce, and we will take care of all the stuff that you need, and you build and make it even better. I think that's a pretty good proposition. I think that's where doing things together makes more sense. Better use of talent, and then also. It's a journey, right? People went out into the streaming world and everyone felt that I can do this alone. It's not that difficult. But actually it is quite difficult.
Then it got competitive.
Exactly. And then you need super good talent, and there's only so many of those. So again, doing things together makes sense on so many levels.
Jonathan?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, I have a sort of simple line that I use, which is fundamentally, again, in my space, in the space of broadcasting, simplistically, broadcasters should compete on content. That's the thing that they're really good at, and that's where they should have a competitive advantage and be really good at it. I think there has been historically a sense that technology can be a source of competitive advantage. Maybe that's true for some companies, but I think, again, if you're a national broadcaster whose core business is getting content in front of eyeballs, it's just, if you want to kind of embrace the latest technology and ultimately deliver at scale to the benefit of viewers, that's the business you're in, you're far better off doing that in a collaborative way, rather than trying to see it as a sort of singular source of competitive advantage. The irony with us is, in a way, we don't seek to be at the technological forefront of kind of innovations, ironically. I mean, the Bedrock team are way ahead of us in terms of probably some of the stuff they're thinking about. Our goal is to take technology and make it mass market. And that's kind of what we've tried to do with Freely in a way, is because all we fundamentally care about is getting as many viewers as possible in front of great shows. But the benefit of sort of doing that collaboratively is you just speed up that process, I think. Yeah. So that's kind of our philosophy.
You know, if the epicenter of value that an organisation like yours creates for consumers is orientated around content, what are the challenges and hurdles that you have to overcome in mobilising the JV to deliver that content?
There is always a challenge of, and I'm sure Jonas will have this as well, when you have 4 different shareholders with 4 different business models and 4 different strategies and 4 different B2C content propositions and their own players, that creates a challenge. Because they're not the same organisation, they don't think the same, and they don't have entirely the same strategy. So collaboration is inherently challenging. I think the positive, though, for me, and I've been doing this job for 10 years, and lived and breathed collaboration, and prior to that was at Channel 4, and we were part of the joint ventures, is because of your earlier question, because the need and the benefits are growing, actually those sources of friction are less and less, actually. What's great to see in the public service broadcasters in the UK is that they will continue to all invest in their own VOD players, and that having a direct-to-consumer relationship with their customers is really critical to them. But it still leaves a lot of space where there are things they can do together. And clearly they're collaborating on Freely, starting to do more together in kind of ad tech, and there's just areas where you're far better kind of thinking about what's the best outcome for the viewer and what's the best outcome commercially by working together. So the positive I have in all of this is that collaboration's getting easier. It's not easy on a day-to-day basis, probably you'd share that as well, but it seems to only go, to one of my early points, only going in one direction.
But also collaboration is a skill, and it's a skill that you learn, right? It's not like you can, people think it's difficult, I agree, but it's often difficult because they haven't done it. Yeah. And I see, I'm sure you see a similar thing, I see amongst our partners, there's a learning curve, there's a maturity curve, right? And the first year with Bedrock, they're like they think in the old ways, and then they start, you can see how the light bulb goes on, and they're like, okay, I'm starting to get it now. And funnily enough, in our case, so we have a product board that meets on a quarterly basis, and we kind of organize things. Now our partners are having pre-meetings before the product board to pre-align, like that they're literally doing a lot of the work for us, so to speak. So I mean, that's my point. They're getting to like a maturity level where actually we don't need to kind of, push them together. They're like, we get this now. Like we're gonna. So it's a skill that you get better at. That's really important to think about.
Sorry, just to agree with that and to build on your point, I think it's definitely it's you see it becoming almost a cultural part of how organisations work. They start to embrace it rather than fight it. One thing I've learned, it's taken me a while to learn this, and kind of building on that point, is what collaboration isn't is sort of looking at 2 organisations and what they're doing currently and thinking, how do we put that together? That usually leads to kind of very, very ineffective mergers in my experience. What collaboration, and this has been a journey for us, is sort of fundamentally, what are the shared goals you all have? What are the outcomes you're seeking to achieve in 5 years' time? And they're usually pretty simple. Yeah. And then you work back to, okay, what have we got now, and how do we... And I think if you get over that, it's not trying to force 2 things together that you've currently got, and add to the point that Jonas was just making, that it becomes almost infectious within the organisations. They want to do it. You see 4 CTOs sitting together having a conversation about how they can work together, rather than sitting there going, no, I'm not going to do that. It starts to become sort of more just part of the DNA and the culture of the organisation. But it does, I totally agree, it takes time.
It strikes me, guys, that the DNA of what you've both just offered, to an extent, and it's maybe slightly off-piste in terms of this topic, but it feels like what you're talking about is leadership. It's that kind of the maturity, people, a culture, shared objectives. There's. I don't want to get too deeply into that topic, but in the new chapter of collaboration, the age-old challenges of leadership seem to have been summoned forward. Yeah. Anyway,
I think but I think you're right. I think it is. I don't know if you'd agree. I think it is about. I'm not saying my leadership. It is about leadership generally within the organisations. It is about culture, and it's recognising it's not collaboration isn't a transactional relationship. It's a philosophical way of working.
Absolutely.
Where there is give and take, but and I know it sounds very philosophical, but the common good is much better than what you would do to the counterfactual of working alone.
So we've talked a lot there about the kind of shifting agendas of stakeholders internally to achieve the mutual success. What about shifting positions of competition and market positions? Because that obviously the solar system of competition is affected when two planets become one, etc. Have you seen that? Do you feel that as an ongoing topic within the competitive horizon that Bedrock exists on?
You mean competitors amongst our partners, so to speak?
No, competitors to the output. So, for example, the market that you sell into, I know from being in that market that quite often when people talk about Bedrock, they talk about the joint venture constellation that is actually behind Bedrock and the gravity that creates. It creates quite a lot of strategic presence. Is that something that's unfolded and increased over the period of time since you've been Chief Executive, Jonas? Or what's your view of it?
I don't know. I think some people look at it as a positive, and I would argue that Bedrock and the shareholders around Bedrock, I think they're generally quite good players to kind of attach your faith towards, right? Because I don't know. I don't see it as a problem at all. As in, I think it's rather a strength, but I guess it depends a little bit from the viewpoint, right?
Yeah, absolutely. What about?
I suppose the only thing I'd add is that one of the things I think has been interesting about the TV space for me is that 20 years ago I absolutely knew kind of who was competing with who, and in the marketplace today, and you kind of see it here at IBC, it's quite hard to work out who the competitors, who is competing with who, and how the markets. Someone asked me the other day, kind of, who do you see as the competitive propositions to Freely? And I was like, I don't really know. I mean, that's not how it works. Freely is a service that has public service broadcasters involved, TV operating system partners, TV manufacturer partners. We're working across the entire value chain. We're all sort of at the end of the day fighting for the same pounds that are being spent by customers.
Your friends and competitors, depending on the day, right?
So it's coexistence, and it's kind of. Fundamentally, unless you're as big as kind of a huge Silicon Valley player, you are competing and collaborating and acting in the same, in the same kind of ecosystem, and that's how you survive. Or thrive.
It's more messy
more positively. Now. It is very messy.
It's more messy nowadays. Before it was clear.
Life was much simpler about 20 years ago. But.
What about monetization strategies? The point that you've just made, and the need for all of these entities to somehow earn for their existence. Is it compromised? Is it optimized? How do those agendas play into different stages of maturity in these joint ventures?
Shall I start on that? It's a good question. I don't know. I'm not going to give you a brilliant answer, I don't think. I mean, our model of collaboration is really on distribution and discovery and how content is found. Our model on Freely is the monetization of content on Freely. It isn't done collaboratively. It's done by each individual broadcaster. So the way in which the live stream from ITV or the content in ITVX is monetized is down to ITV. I think one of the interesting areas of the next 5 years is what's the depth and level of collaboration in monetization. And I see in other markets some interesting developments. I've seen that I think there's a relationship that's sort of forming between the German broadcasters on AdTech, which is really interesting. So I wonder if the next wave of collaboration will be more on monetization. That's almost at the most difficult end of collaboration, probably, because you are getting to the really kind of the pounds and pence part in UK language. But I think it's perhaps where it goes next, interestingly. But today, our model of collaboration is much more kind of distribution and discovery and sort of how content is found. The monetization is still left to the individual broadcaster. And I guess it's probably the same for you in terms of how your model works.
Yeah, exactly. It is. We pride ourselves on being... We have kind of one engine behind or under the hood, but everything else is very flexible, and everyone, so in one country they will run an AVOD model, and another country will be an SVOD. Okay, nowadays it's more kind of hybrid, but they still are stronger in one. So basically, they can choose, basically. They don't have to collaborate, they don't have to agree on something. So there's a lot of things where they actually don't have to collaborate, and I think monetization is one of many examples. Having said all of that, I think what is interesting nowadays, I would say with the tech also comes the flexibility of experimentation, because in the old days, you were either a free-to-air player and then you were doing advertising full stop. Here, it allows you to just more, to test things, and I would say even if you have someone coming from the AWOD space, they're all playing around with SVOD. They're all seeing how that works. Where's the right price point to get people to pay? So I think it's quite interesting, the possibilities that tech offers.
So we're in a moment of accentuated propensity to collaborate and do joint ventures. The reasons are very evident in lots of different ways. Final question is, do you see that continuing to be the mood music of our sector for the immediate future and maybe into the long term, or do you think there will be a juncture in the road that will change the direction again to more isolated agendas for the entities that end up coming?
I can go first. I mean, I have a very quick and simple answer to that. I think it's an absolute necessity. If you're fundamentally in the business we're both in, which is sort of working with national broadcasters, and we want national broadcasting to grow and sustain and continue to have a role to play, which I think is absolutely critical. Collaboration is just a necessity to continue to kind of exist and evolve and develop. So I mean, I'm sort of almost philosophical on this point, kind of completely bought in. I think it's interesting where it goes. We talked earlier about monetization. Where are the areas? I suppose at the heart of the question for each national broadcaster in my world is, what do you truly need to do yourself, and what actually can you do together with others? But if you want to continue to, in the world we're heading into, to continue to have the same kind of scale and reach as a broadcaster, you have to collaborate more.
I couldn't agree more. I really think that this is the direction we're heading. It will be more collaboration, and I am of the belief local storytelling is really, really important. And I think we're all, fathers, and I look at my kids, right? I want them to have a diversity of content. I don't want them to necessarily only consume US or international content. And I think fundamentally, with all the changes our industry is going through, if we don't collaborate, we will not be in a position to bring those local stories to all the users and all the audience. It's a must, it's a must. We have to learn how to collaborate better. It's I think it's that's where we're heading, and that's
100% agree. 100% agree.
Gentlemen, I'd like to extend my thanks and gratitude for the time that you've taken in what must be an extremely busy schedule at an event like this to attend this podcast. Jonathan, it's been a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you,
Jonas.
enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to meet you again, and I hope that everybody listening to this episode has felt as rewarded as I have from being educated on the topic of joint ventures in the media space. You two very well qualified gentlemen.
Super nice. Always nice to hang out with you. So.
Mutual feeling.
And with Jonathan, by the way.
And now Jonathan's part of the gang.
Super nice. Thanks a lot.
Brilliant.